This is the second in several videos on science and the Bible. In the last one, we explored how Darwin came about and some of the theories he had. And in this particular video, we're going to discuss some more of those theories and try to reason why he thought the way he did and what the Bible says in response to them. We want to always remember 1 Peter 3:15. Always be ready to give an intelligent defense of what you believe to anyone who asks you for the reason for the hope that you have. So basically, these videos are for you. They're for you to gain and increase your knowledge of science in this case. And this would be to help you when somebody does ask you about your faith. Okay, there are a lot of different theories that Darwin had, and there are several. I'm just going to go through several of them. One of them is he believed that giraffes had longer necks because they were trying to reach, they evolved. They started out with shorter necks. They were start out with the same necks that gazelles had. And because they were trying to reach for the top leaves of the tree, their necks grew and grew and grew, evolved over millions of years. Scientists today know that that isn't the truth, that isn't the fact, because they've tried to breed giraffes with shorter and longer necks and weren't able to do it. A giraffe just has a certain amount of neck, and that's it. And then the other reasoning behind this is, well, why don't gazelles and gnus and different animals like that grow longer necks too if they want to get the leaves from the trees too? So there's just a lot of stuff, just common sense makes that you don't want to really believe all that. Another one that is very prevalent in the Darwin's evolution theories has to do with homologous structures. Basically, if you have different species with the same kind of structures, then they're probably the same, came from the same original cell. A long time ago, we talked about the tree the last time and versus the garden. And this is a picture of different animals and different bone structures. And we have a whale and a human and a dog and a bird. So if you look at that, here's the whale over here, the fin. Here's the human hand, here's the dog, and here's the bird. Now, scientists, evolutionists, believe that the part that's dark right here, that little dark part there, that part there, that part there, and that part there, were so alike that they must have come from the same creatures. They have some other examples of that, pictures of that. This is probably a better rendition, and these are examples of, here's a bat, and here's a whale fin, and here's human hand, and here's several other things. And so they said, okay, because this is this way, they all must have come from the same thing. Well, we proved now that that isn't true, but still the textbooks still show that. So one of the things that is a big thing with the evolutionists is apes going to man. And there's a lot of different theories within the theory that Darwin had. But basically, in the newer days now, especially with DNA, it comes down to chromosomes. Take chimpanzees, for instance. The Darwinists thought that white man came from chimpanzees. So because of that, nowadays we have, like we talked about in the last video, we have DNA and chromosomes and genes, and we can understand all this kind of stuff. And humans have they're 98% the same gene code as chimpanzee, but not completely. For instance, in the chromosomes, humans have 46 chromosomes and chimpanzees have 48 chromosomes. So they're never gonna mix. If you did try to mate them, nothing would ever happen. No creature would ever happen, either a man or a chimpanzee, because when the chromosomes divide, you get 23 from your mom and 23 from your dad, and they go to make you get 46. With chimpanzees, if you did it with the chimpanzees, you're going to have an extra 2 chromosomes someplace. And that just doesn't, the body doesn't know what to do with that. The genes don't know what to do with that, so obviously that wouldn't work. There are a lot of other things. There's a thing called a zona pellucida membrane. Basically, a human egg has a membrane around it, and that membrane will only let the sperm of a human penetrate the membrane. If it's a sperm of anything else, whether it's animal, vegetable, mineral, doesn't make any difference, the membrane, you can't penetrate it because of this particular coating. And the evolutionists and the scientists don't really have, and non-Christian scientists don't really have an answer for that. They still think they can create life someday. So the problem again is that scientists will take evidence that they think will help their cause and they'll put that in the textbooks, and the evidence that won't help their cause they throw away. As a matter of fact, they are so prevalent and predominant in the scientific community that if you happen to be an instructor, let's say a ninth grade or freshman science instructor, and you come out of high school and you are out of college and you get ready to teach science, and you would have a choice. You'd say, okay, now I know you only teach evolution here, but I like to teach, 50% creation or 50% evolution, or at least give them a choice, let the kids do that. You won't get a job. They've already got it down, so anybody who starts teaching creation science will get kicked out whether you have tenure or not. No scientific publications will accept any kind of creationist literature, any proposals, any manuscripts, except now we have a creationist publishing company, ICR, and they will go ahead and publish some of the things. But their mainstream will not do that, and then the colleges or universities. So some of the other things that evolutionists have no clue for is, for instance, like a tuna fish. A tuna fish is pretty much solid muscle. It can go 40 miles an hour, and it's because of its mainstream, the way that the body is built. It's all muscle, and it's very streamlined. Scientists have been trying to figure out to build something like that, even close, and they can't even get close. It's not. Scientists can't even develop a blade of grass. That's just beyond our comprehension. The blade of grass is pretty simple. The dragonfly flaps his wings at 40 times a second. They can't get anything to do that. It's just beyond their meanings. So one of the evolutionist thing is that new species are springing up all the time. Well, that's not really true. We've not ever seen any new species. We think, and scientists agree, that there are about 8,000 species of different kinds of animals in man. There are, so many thousands of species of plants and different kinds of animals and canines and equines and all these kind of things. And when you add all those up, this different species come to about 8,000. That's what they think originally started out with. Now there are only about 4,000 species. So about half of them had died off. The dinosaurs, for instance, and some of the rest of them have become extinct. The dodo bird and all those kind of different things. So they only have 4,000 species, but the evolutionists think that you can take two different species and make another species. Well, they've never had any proof of that. They're still looking for that, and it's just a theory. So there are other things. I'm just going to kind of go through a lot of different kinds of things. For instance, coral growth. The evolutionists think that coral's been growing for millions and billions of years, and they now have scientific evidence, and they have actually done tests on coral, and the oldest coral they can find any place on Earth is about 3,000 years old, which leads to the creationist theory. It kind of goes for that because the creationists think the Earth is about 6,000 years old, rather than billions and billions of years. And every day they're making new experiments, and different groups are coming in and proving that evolution, this little piece is wrong. Now this little piece is wrong. So that's just one of them. One of the cool things that I thought was this little, this is called a flagellum, and it's in a piece. This is actually what it looks like. It looks like a little jet-propelled something or other there, and that's basically what it is. This is the thing, and this is a breakdown of what the thing is inside. It's got all kinds of, it's got a little motor, and it's got all kinds of little things inside. It's got a little power pack inside, and it's got little not flippers, but little like a whirlpool that goes around. And what this thing is, this is actually the tentacle that comes out from a piece of bacteria. All bacteria have this, especially like salmonella, things like that. The bacteria, all bacteria have this flagellum, and this is how the bacteria propels itself around. There are 8 million of these guys on a human hair. That's how many bacteria, that's how many of these little flagellums. And the cool thing about it is it's a little tiny motor that makes all this, an ion motor that makes this thing run. And it's got all these components in it. And they can see all this in microscopes. So it's got this little tiny thing that just a rotary motor just goes like crazy. And it's ion powered, so there's no real power to it. It's part of the, and there's so many of these, millions of these on a piece of hair. And the scientists don't have any answers for this. They still can't figure it out. They can see it and they know what it does, but they have no idea about it. As a matter of fact, it can go up and down, back and forth, right and left, whatever you want to do, just immediately back and forth. And they can't even get like a helicopter or some kind of plane to do that. You know, big monster plane, and here they've got this is all happening within bacteria. The other thing they can't figure out is these devices, these organs that are complete, they're called complex organs. So for instance, like the human eye or the human brain or the human ear for that matter. These are organs that are complete by themselves. If you didn't have one little component of the eye, you wouldn't have sight. If you didn't have the rods, for instance, the cones and the rods on the back of the eye, if you didn't have the rods, you couldn't see. If you didn't have the iris in the front, you couldn't see. There's all these intricate parts inside of an eyeball, for instance, and I was going to bring an example of an eyeball, sliced away, but kind of gross. Anyway, and so they have all these things, and so if it evolved, if creatures didn't have eyes, and then eventually they evolved and had eyes, which is what the evolutionists think, then the problem with that is, what was this eye doing the whole time before it became an eye? And when did it finally become an eye? Just no way for them to put all this stuff together. Another example, when you have a sand dune out in the Sahara Desert, they have measured in the dunes, however they are, the degree of the dune is always 35 degrees. No matter what kind of sand dune, small, bigger, whatever it is, this angle is always 35 degrees on sand dunes. Okay, so if you take the Grand Canyon, they think that the Grand Canyon has evolved to start off with just a piece of flat ground, and billions of years ago, so streams started trickling through, and pretty soon it got more and more and more, and pretty soon it's got a nice big gap in it, several hundred feet wide and several hundred feet deep, that is now what we call the Grand Canyon. So it's eroded all this stuff away. And we'll talk about this in detail in another video. But the problem with that is that they think that this all happened over millions of years. Well, if it did, as it eroded and as sand does, the degree of these sand dunes or these dissipations or these divisions in the Grand Canyon should be 35 degrees. If you take underneath the ocean, here's the ocean, underneath the ocean, the dunes down underneath the oceans are all 25 degrees. That's the angle there. There's no 35, they're all 25 degrees. Oh, you couldn't see that, could you? Okay. The sand dunes, put a sand dune up here. In the sea, the degree of angle is always 25 degrees. And it just so happens that the Grand Canyon, all of these are 25 degrees, telling us that the Grand Canyon once was covered with water, and that very, very quickly the sea bottom, just as well as sea bottom, the Grand Canyon was formed not maybe in a couple days rather than millions and millions of years. So if it eroded, it would have dunes like the sand dunes do of 35 degree angle, but it doesn't. It has 25 degree angle, just like the sea dunes, the dunes in the sea. A lot of stuff that's coming about now that wasn't around in Darwin's time, and it would really be blowing Darwin away. Another problem they have, the evolutionists have, are insects. Insects don't have any evolutionary ancestors. There's no insects in fossils or anything like that. They just all at once appeared, all at once. Well, the biblical message, if you read Genesis 1 and 2, is that God created insects as well as all the rest of the animals and man, and the birds and the bees and the sea and the sun and all that kind of stuff, created them all at once. And we're finding that more and more and more in the evolutionary theory that we see, the evolutionary column that we see that everything all at once started. Fossils started at a certain particular era, if you would, of the earth. And all at once there was nothing, but all at once there was a whole bunch of fossils and things like that. And again, fossils can only be made if something covers them very quickly with mud or water. Fossils can't be made any other way. So even the fish of the sea, there are fish fossils, and fish obviously can't drown in water, so that's not the case like the evolutionists think. Basically, they had to be covered in muck and mire and some kind of something like a deluge, like a flood, where all the soot and the sediment comes up very quickly and it covers a fish, and that's how you get a fossil. So it fossilizes them. So again, the scientists are taking the fossils, the fossil column, and they see these fossils and they say, okay, this fossil, this fits our theory perfectly. We'll go ahead and do this. Oh, well, this fossil, this looks more like a creationist thing. We'll throw him out. And so that's exactly what they do. So they have a whole pile of stuff they didn't use because it looks too much like something they don't want it to look like. And they have a whole pile of stuff that does look like what they want it to. So they're basically not doing this maliciously, I don't think. They're just promoting their particular opinions, if you would. So one of the major fallacies that evolution has, and we're going to talk about other things. Next time we talk about the solar system, get completely away from evolution. But these first couple ones I want to talk about evolution because it is a main theory right now in science. When they take and they find in the rock, in the sediments, all the different layers that they find. For instance, if you take the Grand Canyon, you look at the side of it, it's a bunch of layers. And this is older, supposedly, and this is newer and newer and newer until you get to today. And the tourists standing up here taking pictures of what's going on down there. So anyway, so the idea is that when you find a fossil down here and you find another fossil over here, this fossil is older than this one because it's lower in the rock scale, okay? Now, that's okay. That sounds really good. The difference here is, this one's buried deeper, so he must be older. But the rocks, the way they date the fossil because of where they are found in the rock, the scheme of rocks here, okay? But they also, they date the rocks by the number of fossils they have in them, the kinds of fossils they have in them. So if this rock has a bunch of, let's say, starfish in it, for whatever reason, there's a bunch of starfish fossils. And this one down here has an amoeba fossil. We'll just put a little amoeba down here. They'll say that the amoeba is older than this because of this fossil. And so this rock is this old, but because these are amoebas or plankton or whatever they have down here, then this has to be older because that's an older creature. So you see the circular reasoning? They're dating the fossils because of where they are in the rock stratus, and they're dating the rocks because of the fossils that are in them. You're kind of going around in a circle here, folks. That doesn't make any sense. And what if you got a rock stratus like this? This is a picture of a piece of the Grand Canyon. Look at that rock stratus. It's all over the place. And we know that there are tectonic plates underneath the earth, and at some point in time, those plates move around, and if they do, you're going to get this, maybe this whole layer right here, stuck down, maybe down below here. So now at once you're going to have lower rocks, which are supposed to be newer, down underneath the older rocks. So we can't really, we can go with the fossil ages, but we can't go with the rock ages because they are switched all around. There's a lot of that, the tectonic plates moving all around. One of the greatest examples I can think of that everybody will remember is Mount St. Helens. When Mount St. Helens erupted, see if I can draw a volcano. Mount St. Helens in Washington, when it erupted, this volcano, all of this ash and all this, lava and all this kind of soot and all this kind of stuff, sediment, a lot of stuff came out and poured down over here. Okay, so they took samples of this, core samples, and they gave them to the evolutionists who are really pro-evolution, and they said, here, you need to go and date these things and tell us how old this rock is, or how old this rock formation is. And they had a great big long cores that they took, and they gave them to evolutionists. And they said, oh yeah, this is 3 million years. And everyone says, yeah, this is 6 million years. And everyone says, this is 4 million years. Well, they all came out in 1980, so they aren't millions of years old, folks. So there's some problems with that. Again, it's what scientists think that they know, but they don't necessarily know. So there's a lot of different things. The scientists are really good about explaining away different things. If you ask them something point blank, they'll probably kind of change the subject to something they know and kind of explain it away. And that's really sad, because there's some really, really intelligent people out there in the scientific community, and they can be using their talents to promote what God says instead of demoting him and knocking him out. So one of the other things they have is they say that there's a solid, when you have a listing of the earth and they have all these different eras, they have the Jurassic era and they have the Mesozoic era and all these different eras, they say, of time that all this stuff happened in. When they have all this, and they say that, put it over here, all this stuff happened, the scientists and the evolutionists especially will say, okay, we have a complete timeline of everything that's ever happened in all these different eras, the different stratus that they have there. But they will admit to gaps. So there are some gaps. So like between this one and this one, there might be a gap here where they don't really know exactly what happened. They know this is older than this, but they don't know exactly what happened. Well, it turns out that they have more gaps. They'll tell you, most evolution will tell you, yeah, we have this complete. We know exactly from today, we know clear back to when zero, when everything started, billions of years ago. We can tell you everything you know about it. But when you get them to dig a little bit deeper, when they actually talk a little bit more of it, we find that they don't know everything. There's a lot of gaps in there. And so what happens is these are the links. We talked a little bit last week about the missing links, the different things, the evolution from one species to another species. Those are what's supposed to fill the gaps, and they can't find those. And so if they're really honest with themselves, they're not going to tell you that they can't really find them. So Darwin, in his theory, he made all these theories up, and then he proceeded the next 30 years to try to find evidence to back up these theories. And we read a piece of Darwin last time that said that, if we don't find the missing links, then his theories aren't worth anything. And we haven't found the missing links. And his theories aren't worth anything. But he was just basically looking for stuff to prove his point. Didn't find the links. So the other thing he was trying to do is he was trying to eliminate any kind of supernatural explanation, if you would. In other words, he was trying to make sure that God was not a part of the picture, because he, like the rest of the scientists of his day who followed him, didn't want to be judged. They didn't want to know truth. They wanted to make their own truth. They wanted to be the keepers of truth. One of the things that I thought was very cute that they said, I thought this was neat. It says, according to evolution, we are nothing more than protoplasm waiting to become manure. I'll say that one more time. According to evolution, we are nothing more than protoplasm waiting to become manure. That's how they think. They're all about that, and they don't want anything else to do with it. They don't want to know about Christianity especially. Other religions, they can actually, it's kind of interesting, other religions they can tolerate, but Christianity they cannot tolerate. I think because they know the truth. So we talked last time about naturalism, and naturalism is going nature's way and taking full hold of evolution. And evolution is the answer, and it's the religion and all that kind of stuff. And it's actually replaced Christianity in the Western world now. So naturalism, or science, is the new religion. As we talked about before, the the people won't let them, the scientific community won't publish any of their papers or anything. Let me read a little piece out of one of the textbooks, current science. I've read 67 books so far on all these subjects, and this was out of one of them. I thought it was very interesting. Darwin observed that animals change. This is out of a high school textbook. Look at all the different varieties and species of animals we have today. Well, I guess that is evolution. Given enough time, these sorts of little changes can actually add up to big changes that cause molecules to man evolution. We talked last time about the little tiny molecule going to the great big, to turning into man eventually. So a lot of times we spend too much time on Darwinism. We don't think about science. We think that Darwinism and science are the same thing. And actually, Darwinism may tell you something, but science, if you look at pure science, doesn't tell you that. It actually matches a biblical record. And again, we're talking more about the folks who want to change the change history and change the biblical scriptures, rewrite the Genesis, if you would. A couple things right here at the end. We're trying to enlighten you so you'll understand more about what science is, or what science is supposed to be, and that it is biblical, and that actually science does follow the Bible very closely. And then the Bible doesn't follow science. Science follows the Bible. So let me read a little piece here at the end. The problem we have as Christians today is that because these scientists are so knowledgeable, and we are so limited, that we kind of, if they said it's true, then it's probably true. And so we just kind of withdraw, as Christians, we kind of withdraw from some of the fields of public, commercial, and social life. Let me read this. When we enter these fields, we are compelled to accept for purposes of discussion the secular frame of reference established there. We have no alternative except that of silence. We have no Christian vocabulary to match the complexity of contemporary political, social, and industrial life. So the problem here is that because we don't have the words or the tools to talk to somebody intelligently about, we just kind of back off and don't say anything. And God doesn't allow us to do that. He wants us to be very evident and aware of things that are going on, and have an answer for anybody who talks to you about your religion, about your faith. Secularism is so rooted in this world that it does not follow for the existence of any other. And that really is true. 1 Peter 3:15, always be ready to give an intelligent defense of what you believe to anyone who asks you for the reason for the hope that you have. 1 Peter 3:15. In the next video, we're going to discuss the solar system, the stars, chemical imbalances of the Earth's elements, how it's all kind of finely tuned, the age of the Earth, and we'll also look at the first couple of chapters of Genesis. Thank you.